understand that we demand a seat at the table. We're not asking, we're not thinking about it. We're moving forward with our participation in this economic, political, psychological, sociological movement. It takes leadership, leading minds to share with us insightful perspectives. My co-host, Kevin Hooks, executive, a professional development officer, and of course, aspiring and inspiring entrepreneur. But as always, at a seat at the table, we give those who understand even more deeply, work every day to make the reality of our culture and our community. Because business is our culture. And we want to resurrect what should be inside of you by introducing you to individuals who fight. And it's a real fight for dollars that this systematic oppression continues to want to ignore our share of what is already ours, our share of what we've already built, our share of the access that is often denied and redlined by this system. But in order to have someone like that, most people have to pay. But this gentleman, who is the president of the U.S. Black Chamber, has dedicated his movement to inspiring and instructing us on how to win. We want to thank you, Mr. Ron Busby, for coming to a seat at the table. How are you?
I'm doing well, and it's an honor to be here the first Monday of August, which is now known as Black Business Month. So it's an honor to be here to talk about a Black economic agenda for our communities across the country. So I'm excited about being here, spending this time with you.
Thank you so much. We've taken this moment, and you say it's Black Business Month. Can you describe two of the behaviors that you know that we should be activating on this month and forever?
Well, the first one I think is extremely important is we have to define who we are and not allow other communities to tell us how we should operate. And I say that under the premise of minority. Right now, you're hearing a lot of conversations about MWBE. And as we talk to both policymakers, corporate America, as well as just people that are discussing how to move our agenda forward, they usually lump us in a bucket of minority. And I say, when I go to bed at night, I'm Black. And when I wake up the following morning, I'm Black. We're not necessarily minorities. We're not necessarily small. We're not necessarily women, which is now category all of us inclusive. So when the conversation about diversity and inclusion starts to come into an articulation, we have to stop the conversation and say, no, although we think diversity and inclusion is important for all communities, this conversation during this month of August, particularly what is going on around the country as it relates to Black people, this needs to be our conversation about our agenda spoken on behalf of Black people. And so the first thing I want folk to talk about from here going forward is not about a minority conversation, but really about a Black conversation. And then the second thing, the reason that's important is as we go to corporate America as well as policymakers, and part of our demands request is we want you to increase your spend with Black-owned businesses. They say, great, they will do that. But currently there's no way of being able to monitor that today. And we all know what gets counted, gets measured, gets acted on. And if you lump us in a bucket of minority, then they say, well, great, our minority spend is great. We're spending a great deal of money with white women. Our minority bucket is great. We're spending a great deal of money with Asian tech firms. We have to look at our conversation, our communities, our businesses, and make sure that we're certified as being Black owned. Right now across the country, Black Lives Matter, Black dollars matter, Black ownership matters. And so you'll see it trending. So you got white firms putting up Black Lives Matter posters on their doors and on their ownership saying, hey, we're Black too, so come on in, without anybody ever having a conversation of saying, wait a minute, you weren't Black yesterday. How all of a sudden this morning you're Black owned? And then the third thing is we have to make sure that it's an accountability so that when we go and talk to corporate America about spending money with Black firms to improve our conditions, that they too can say, okay, last year we actually know how much money we spent, and next year this is our goal. Currently, we can't do that. So we got to talk about our communities, our conversations as it relates to who we are, as opposed to someone else defining who we are.
That's my long pause. That's my long pause, bro. You know? I want my community to think about it a little bit. You know, you said a lot. We didn't say amen. We really, so I always give a long pause just so everybody think about what he said, think about it, put it on, try it on. Well, clearly here at Rolling Out, there's no, we're not talking minority. We're talking Black. We're talking an agenda that has KPIs that I want to be measured against Black. And I think we've got to be fair to all those people that are even in diversity, equity, and inclusion by telling CEOs, you can't give us a Black person with no power. We can't have a Black person with no budget. You can't have a Black person whose straw is to send us down, whoo, like we're on a roller coaster ride down to somebody who never is going to never going to meet you. You're not going to be at no church. You're not going to be at one homecoming I'm ever going to see. So it's easy for you to tell me no. So for me, the very essence of what you're saying makes sense. But I want us to leave here with some KPIs. Because my notion of even creating a seat at the table is so that everybody understands what's on the menu. Because for some of my community members, they don't even understand. You count your dollars when you go to order filet mignon. You know that is not the same as a burger. You know that when you sit down and you say a sea bass, you know that that's not the same as whiting. So at the end of the day, if you go to your refrigerator and you don't own, and that company doesn't sponsor your child's Little League, or you sending a child to an HBCU and you haven't seen Clorox give $50 billion and we having to use Clorox wipes, there's a problem. And we want to meet with the CMO of Clorox. And I want to meet with her with you, Ron. I appreciate and applaud all you're doing with Black Enterprise. And I'm ready to do a project with my brother too, because there's enough for all of us. You got one bank, I want to do a project with another bank. With the same Black U.S. Black Chamber. I'm not mad at my brother Bush. I'm proud. We're not going to do that. We in the bucket and only one Black can have. We don't want no more special Blacks. And I hope you tell them we don't want any more special Blacks.
No more.
We don't want no more special Blacks. Because I love my brother. So if he getting your check, I can find another bank because they print money every day, float stock, bonds, commodities every single day.
Well, I think in this environment, we need all hands on deck. So I don't think it's one size fits all. I think it's a conversation about how we move our communities forward. And I think we all have a unique voice. We bring a unique set of tools to the table. And if you're talking about Black Enterprise, we have partnered with some relationships with them, various banks. I think a lot of people are excited seeing corporate America write checks. What they need to understand is that much of those dollars are from taxpayer dollars. When the payroll protection plan was created, we were at the table. Never were the words Black or African American ever written in those documents. It was about small business, and it was about protecting small businesses, employees, not so much for the business owner, but for the folk that he or she employed, which put us at a deficit because out of the 2.6 million Black-owned businesses that we own and operate, 2.5 million have no employees. So we were really looking at only about 115,000 firms that could participate in the payroll protection plan. What we should have been having conversations about was the idle loan plan. But I think the way it was marketed was, if you really looked at the payroll protection plan, Black folks said, well, I can't participate because I don't have any employees. The EIDL loan was marketed as a loan program, and Black folk were scared to participate because they didn't want to have to give the money back. If you understood the program, though, the first $10,000 of the EIDL loan program, you didn't have to repay. So for our community, we should have been moving our businesses towards the EIDL loan program instead of all of the competition that was going on with the payroll protection plan. If you remember the first day that it was announced on a Friday afternoon, there were $349 billion in the program. By Saturday evening, $250 billion of those dollars were already allocated to 50 publicly traded firms. So they had already taken up the majority of the dollars, leaving the rest of all of the small businesses around the country to compete for $99 billion, which meant that most of our small businesses are 1099. We have people that work for us. You got folk that work for you, but usually they're not employees. They're contractors, they're subcontractors, they're 1099, because that's what we tell our community to do. Go into business for yourself, have some flexibility so that you can maintain your own taxes and your own health care, and you can control how fast you grow, you can control your income, and have different multiple revenue streams. And now they're telling those small businesses that contract out those dollars that they have to compete against their own 1099 folk that work for them for the access to the capital that was available. So it was just a very convoluted program that they made sure we didn't understand. Then they said, okay, well, you have to go to your bank. Only 30% of Black businesses have a true lending officer that they could go to. So that put us in a deficit. And then they came back and said, well, we'll just give it to you fintech. And we're saying no. In these times, we really do want to push people towards their banks because we knew we had lost about 40% of our businesses. 441,000 businesses closed between February and April, which meant all of those firms had customers, clients, revenue streams, employees that they lost, which meant that businesses had the opportunity to go in and recapture that revenue stream and keep it in our businesses within our communities, which meant that they were going to need banking relationships to do mergers, acquisitions, joint ventures of the sort. Meant that you had to have a relationship with the bank. So we want people to go to the Black-owned banks across the country, the 19 Black-owned banks, to make sure that they establish relationships there. That's how you really move a Black economic agenda that can stay in our communities.
So Ron,
yes,
let's get down to facts.
All right.
So, Black folk are 3 times more likely to die from the pandemic, from Corona. So all this money is allocated to protect us. Our owned and operated, privately owned individual firms are more likely to shutter as a result of the pandemic through no fault of their own. And yet by 2024, we're going to be nearing $2 trillion in annual buying power. So how does this converge? How do we leverage that reality as we have a seat at the table to say, well, we're talking about not only are we seeking value from you, we're seeking to utilize our value for you.
That's a great perspective and a great way to put it. I think for so long in our fight to have equity, we've always used it as a tool against the mainstream. Like, we're not going to buy your products or your services, and we're going to keep those dollars within our communities. I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma just last weekend.
My hometown, by the way.
Oh, man, I was really impressed. And I felt a little awkward because I had gone down before, but I truly understand the value of a city like Tulsa where the economy was really built on the backs of Black people. Their whole idea was, if we build it and create it, they will come, right? Even if it's just amongst ourselves. We build products, we build services. If we just realize that we're better entrepreneurs than we are as consumers, then we can market to everyone. White folk understand, when we talk about having $1 trillion of spend power, understand, that ain't Black folks saying that. That's usually white corporations saying, Black people have $1 trillion of spend power. How can we market to them to make sure that we capture our piece of that and not leave our opportunities for our corporation? We just have to flip the conversation and say, we have $1 trillion of spend power. How do we best utilize that? And if it means taking it to one company or another, let's make that decision. I tell the story all the time that when Dr. King talked about the next version of the revolution, it really was about spend power. And he leans over to Jesse and says, Jesse, what's the name of that bread company again? Wonder
Right.
Bread? Well, we're not going to buy Wonder Bread.
Mhm.
Jesse, what's the name of that cola company? Pepsi Cola? Well, we not. That's how Coca-Cola gathered our commitment to sponsor and continue to drink Coke, is because our civil rights leaders, as leaders and Black people, our trends, our values of what we spend our money on goes far for
Right.
both white companies and Black companies. We just have to figure out, and Reverend Jackson used to do a great deal with the scorecards. We just have to take that further along to be more than just about, are they spending money with us, but are they really doing the right and the best for our communities across the country?
Right, and the next part of that process is, once we recognize our real value, then let's figure out how we utilize that value and that spending power to create opportunities for ourselves vis-a-vis this, what's going to happen after the pandemic. And I'm known for thinking about, we missed out on the opportunities that was created after the Industrial Revolution, after World War II, after we moved into tech. And so now is an opportunity for us after the pandemic, if we're smart, to recognize the business as we know it is going to be different. The next 5 years is going to produce all kinds of opportunities that we should foresee. And more importantly, we should lead the way in participation. And I know that that's something you guys have to be thinking about. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Sure. So early on in the pandemic, we looked at the 5 industries that 40% of our revenue comes from across the country in the Black business agenda. And those were the industries that were hit the hardest.
Right.
So obviously we know it was restaurants, it was beauty salons here, so they called the luxury services. It was retail, it was transportation, nightclubs, entertainment, and sports. And so we said we have to address those, and let's look at the future of those industries as well, because we knew restaurants weren't going to be the same during the pandemic as well as coming out. And so what you saw us starting to do a lot was to do virtual events and talk to our restaurant owners and talk to our salon owners about what the future of those industries are going to look like. So we started demonstrating, as opposed to having national big conferences and big events, we said, let's do virtual dinner parties. And so we started sending Black-owned restaurant meals to our local sponsors to say, hey, did you know that there was a Black-owned restaurant in your neighborhood? Here's a sample of their food. Here's a bottle of a Black-owned winery. Let's have a virtual conversation about it. And all of a sudden now, some of those Black businesses that you may not necessarily walk into were getting business. We found that Yelp was downgrading Black-owned businesses, not because of the service or the location, but just because they were Black-owned. If you actually experienced it for yourself, you found out that the product and or service was superior in many cases to the white competitors. But until you actually had a chance to either virtually or actually experience it yourself, you were reading someone else's opinion about a business that came from outside of our communities. We have to start utilizing our voices to tell our stories to make sure that people are seeing our products and services as well. But we do have to look at the future of our businesses. And so every Thursday we're doing online classes to talk about the future of those industries and how our businesses can not just sustain now, but actually grow through this economy and afterwards.
That's fantastic. Watson?
I don't know. I just want to make sure that we come away with some KPIs, because the one thing that we don't want to do at the seat of the table is not identify 20 corporations that we want to establish relationships with as it relates to your organization and rolling out. We don't have to say it, but that's 20 that we know, so that have put their score. Ooh, Pepsi said we're going to spend X number.
So if you go on our website, we actually have a tracking system. So all of the corporations that have made these donation commitments, we track those. And then we will have a metrics 6 months from the day that they say that this is going to end. So really effective January 1st, 2021, we'll start to demonstrate how much of that commitment has actually been hit. Because a lot of times commitments are made under stress, and because no one is actually accounting for it, it never really happens. And so we're going to put it out there for America to see, as well as make sure that we're participating and taking advantage of it. And there is at least 50 companies that we do know of.
All right. So for us, we just we'll use your number 50, but we definitely want to say 20, because for us in the media business, and I just want to ask this: Disney rolled off $500 million on Vice. They wrote off. So now I'm asking you and myself and Brother Kelly at First Independence, so that we can get them at least 10% of what they wrote off, granted to 10 African-American, Black-owned media companies as a grant, because you wrote off $500 million. So in this moment, we didn't get any investment. None. But they wrote off $500 million at Disney. So I think 10 of us, at least 10, should get $5 million, just 10%, to at least demonstrate what we could do if someone believed in us. And we need your help on that movement, because it doesn't, in the same way, advertising, PR are truly some of the things that our young people know that they can do. Those are things, copywriting, really calculating what's cool, and we're not in that industry. And then they've utilized what they call total market strategy. So that basically put us out of the business for 10 years, because they never had a call. So, and then 0 media days. So out of those 50 companies, how many of them had PR and media days? We need your help on that as well. Because at the end of the day, that's a whole bucket for every brand Pepsi has.
We can definitely take a look at, I know we gave testimony at the Senate 2 weeks ago, and one of the conversations was about Black media and the importance of it. I can't remember which senator brought it up to the table. We represent and partner with NABOB, and so we said it is important for the elected officials primarily, as well as I made the statement that a lot of the reasons why Black business owners didn't understand the PPP and EIDL is because we did not tell that story through our own eyes and ears. We didn't let our media partners really to be able to articulate how, when, and where to take advantage of it. And I said that was a definite ding on Treasury as well as the SBA, and that they should be held accountable going forward in this next tranche to ensure that NABOB and NNPA had an opportunity to participate. So it has been, it is on record in reference to both the next tranche of funding as well as the campaigns that are coming down the road here in the next 90 days.
Campaigns are cool, but part of what I want to share with you is the post office. Post office has a huge budget. Literally, Amtrak has a huge budget. Got rid of the Black agency. Don't have the same buys anymore. Clearly, the post office doesn't have a Black agency at all, neither does Amtrak. So there are at least 20 governmental agencies that don't, not just political, governmental agencies or quasi that are funded by our government, and then all the corporations that carry the mail. So your planes, your trains, and anybody that carries your civil servants, how can they do business without doing business with us?
Fair question.
If you're going to get the government's money, you got to share it with the government's people. So, and I've admired everything that you've done. So I just want to make sure that we partnered up on some KPIs, at least identified those, figure out how we can all join. I think the other requirement, now that you mentioned the banks, I think there was no requirement of the banks on who they were to do outreach to. So I think no one did that matrix. So if you're a Black business based on these zip codes, if you can redline me one way, then you should include me another. So nobody reverse engineered how many Black banks or how many Black small business or just small business in general under 250,000 in a bank account for the year did you reach out to during that particular period. So systematically, we were redlined from even the number one bank from doing outreach because those things were done. So I think the other thing is just working with a payroll system for many of our brothers and sisters. And there are two that I think we should create partnerships with our community. So people who are independently, that one entrepreneur and that one business person can figure out how to claim and have some type of payroll system set up.
I agree with that.
Many didn't have and didn't even, kind of recognize the fact that if you just had a payroll system and could turn it in, that you could have got some PPP and the loan. So I think those are some of the things that we can do because we have a conference coming up September 25th and 26th, RIDE, which obviously we're going to have you keynote in at least one of those sessions. But I just had you on our mind. We love what you do. I just want to become a stronger partner because we need you. We know we advocate. We can figure out how to share the dollars. Love what you're doing. And I mean that from my heart with you and my brother. Because if my community don't win, I lose.
We both lose.
No, I'm just saying, my community don't win, I lose. So I'm in the community.
I am too.
That's what I'm saying. So I think that's part of what we can do in the near term. Clearly, I would like to see at least 2 to 5 people in your organization profiled a week. Members that are paid and qualified, at least 2 to period. We got 4 million people to come to our website every month, minimum. That's without a big article hidden. So we definitely want to partner and create some of those KPIs, even so that we can be delivering for you. I'm sure you're doing at least 1 article a month with Butch, so we probably need 2 a month with us. Opt-eds, because our community, and then if nothing else, just a Zoom to kind of get people to understand your perspective on just Black. We probably need to link up with a few more Black intellectuals to give us the courage to look back at ourselves and increase our pride level to understand what it is when we do commerce with each other. So we could call it a Tulsa experiment or a Tulsa lab. We could actually have the experiment on how far will you go, to kind of see, can you get your spend up to $1,000 a month with somebody that looks like you, feels like you, and call it a Tulsa experiment.
We could do that as well. I just think right now, everyone is looking for a call to action. And I think between our 2 organizations, we call ourselves the National Voice of Black Business, but you really have the ear of the community and the eyes. And so we'd love to be able to get out what we're talking about here in Washington, D.C. and make it really a localized as well as nationalized conversation so that everybody can be doing the same thing across the country. And it's not going to be an either or, but all.
The other thing is to invite you to restream what you do have. The one thing is the restream on my Facebook page gives you more capacity, and then you and I'll talk about the capacity when we actually look at what a real channel for us business people would look like. It shouldn't just be the Bloomberg channel. We need to really be talking about Black business, Black entrepreneurship on a regular basis, something that is accessible and acquisitions at this moment. But I want to thank you for coming because we clearly have an agenda. TJ is our producer listening, so he's outlined everything, and we'll follow up with a call as soon as we can get on your schedule this week. But I admire what you're doing, but I want you to utilize our platform often. Restreaming is a real simple automatic solution that we can do just to get an hour. That way it's playing with y'all, and we just play it back over here. Because
Yeah.
we all share our reach.
Yeah. No, I'm all in.
Well, we're together, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I will end with saying, you know, these last 4 years, we've heard a lot about making America great again. And I will say, you know, as Black folk, we want America to be great as well. But in order for there to be a great America, there must be a great Black America. And in order for there to be a great Black America, there must be great Black businesses. And in order for there to be great Black businesses, we need a great Black rolling out. And so I ask everybody to continue to support your voice, your station, your followers. And for those that want to find out more information about the U.S. Black Chamber, you can find us at www.usblackchambers.org. We have 145 chambers. I'm in 42 states, plus Canada and 6 countries in Africa, and we have 332,000 members. And would love to have your followers as part of our membership as well.
That sounds like 3 presidents a week. That would give us a buck 50. If we, you know, we could create the chamber questions. We could create chamber hours, so we can have each of the chambers 3 at a time on there. I'm all about the KPIs. I want to see key performance indicators. I'm a dedicated brother to this. Want to make sure that we move forward with all that we do with you, but really be able to even measure our relationship. Did 3 presidents of those chapters get recognized and get on .com? You
will hear from us in the next 48 hours.
Super. Thanks so much for all you do. This is Ron Busby. He is the president, CEO, and true warrior for Black business in this country. #1, we're part of his tribe. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for all you do at the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Kevin, my man.
Woo! We good?
All right, we've got Daryl coming on.
Oh, guys. All right, I'm out. Enjoyed it.
Thank you. Up next, you're watching Rolling Out, a seat at the table. We'd like to welcome my man.
What's up?
Butler, how are you?
All is well, given the circumstances. Long time no talk, Kevin. How you doing?
Man, good to see you, brother. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Even if it is virtual.
I know, right? Hey, this pandemic got us all virtual.
Exactly. The heart's still beating, though. The heart's still beating.
That's right. And then we got to let Muncie get the intro in. Go ahead, Muncie.
Now, for all of you who are just tuning in to a seat at the table, our entire intent is so that you can meet subject matter experts, individuals who believe in what we all want to accomplish, a bigger, better, stronger Black community whose agenda is ourselves. What we do for our children right now in this movement is going to matter the most. There are those who've actually made movements in corporations. One of those great brothers who's been able to accomplish so much, we're bringing to you tonight so that he can share his insight, his perspective, and what moves we can make to be better at representing ourselves in tech and in truth. How are you, Daryl Butler?
All is well, my friend. All is well. It's an honor to be here.
At HP.
I'm trying to make a statement for us as best I can. Doing my best impersonation of a Silicon Valley executive.
Go ahead, Kev.
Hey, so listen, for all of you who don't know, in full transparency, Daryl and I go way back. We both were in agency life for a while, and then we both left to do other things. And, you know, I'm very proud of his progress. Daryl's done some tremendous things. And so, Daryl, for you at Hewlett-Packard, let's talk about some of the things. One of my favorite sayings of all time was from Mark Hurd when he was CEO. And he used to say that he would torture the data until it confessed. And so we were a data-driven industry. You're in a data-driven space. And so talk about some of the things that are important to you moving forward that's directly related to not only the Black Lives Matter movement, but to what we're dealing with the coronavirus and the transitioning of American business.
Okay, that's a lot of weight right there. Let's see if I can tackle that.
Right.
First thing I'll start with is this idea that in a data-driven world, there is still room for art, right? If you were to put Picasso and Einstein in a room, that's the ideal scenario when we think about what big business has a responsibility to do and deliver. That data gives us some validation that we're on the right path, that we are speaking the language of the audience that we want to connect with. The art, however, is the method in which we bring that story to life, right? And what we've seen over the course of the last 6 months, dare I say the entire 2020 year, is a tectonic shift to a digital world. Some have already been there and some have come kicking and screaming. But the reality of it is, this is our new reality. And the opportunity for brands and businesses, to me, exists on a number of different levels. You start by some of the basic tenets, the value system that organizations carry with them day in and day out. Pre-COVID, pre-social justice issues, just basically how these organizations have been built DNA-wise. Then you take it and you put it into this microcosmic moment where everybody's been shut down. We've got, a heightened awakening, if you will, around some of the social issues that have been affecting Black communities for decades, dare I say centuries. You put that together and it really creates an opportunity for the brands that have the right DNA to really stand up their value principles. And you do that in a way where you engender not only yourself, but also the audience that you want to talk to, such that they understand that you're more than just, in our case, silicone, plastic, and screens, right? There is a heartbeat behind the two words H and P, or the two letters H and P. And that heartbeat has to be symbolic of not only what the organization wants to stand for, what the tech community wants to stand for, but for the people that we want these laptops and hardwares sitting on their desk. And that means looking at data, but it also means being in the street, literally and figuratively, where we get a chance to hear the sentiment coming from the communities that are in need. I think it's safe to say there are a lot of tech deserts out there. And as a tech company, we have a responsibility to seed those tech deserts with the equipment that they need to stay competitive. Not even just here nationally across the contiguous states, but we're talking about a global world now. This is not just the US versus, right? We're on a global stage, we're on a global platform, and there are global issues that have to be addressed. And without the right tools in place, a lot of folks are not going to be competitive. And that's one of the things that we're working really tirelessly to address.
So what are some of the challenges that you're facing, if any, to move a big behemoth like HP in the direction that includes some of what you talked about?
Well, I think just by virtue of its size, right? I mean, you said big behemoth, and it is. It's a 80-plus-year-old company that has a great deal of heritage and success in doing what it has done over those 80 years. But what I've said to my constituents in the organization, what got us to where we are will not get us to where we need to be. Plain and simple. Mm-hmm. And that's been a mantra that I've chanted since I walked in the door. It's been one that has been welcomed by a lot of my senior leaders. However, you are talking about shifting a paradigm that has been in place for quite some time. And that's going to take some time. But there are small things that we're doing along the way that reinforce the idea. I go back to that word validation, right? It's one thing for me to say it. It's another way to see it happening and see what the implications are positively. Coming out of May 28th, which is unfortunately going to be a black eye for America for years to come, what we did is activate a racial equality task force. Mm-hmm. And this task force was put in place to complement what we were already doing through our diversity and inclusion initiatives. But this was specifically set up to address some of the issues that we were seeing internally from Black employees, but also the communities at large. That task force is now mobilized, where we have somewhere around 400 people across the organization that have raised their hands to act, right? You know, we've seen all of the, well-pinned shows of solidarity. We've seen everybody kind of raise their hand in support of. But at the end of the day, I'm up in the Bay Area, so I've spent weekends in Oakland for probably the last 2 or 3 months, talking to young people and hearing what they really want, and what they really need. And the fact of the matter is, they want to see action, right? The shows of solidarity are nice, but what it boils down to are meaningful, tangible, actionable things that the community can feel and benefit from. And this racial equality task force that I'm on is really responsible for taking a charter and activating that charter across the country.
Yeah, and you talk about actionable. That's a great transition to, I'm sure, what Munson is getting ready to bombard you with is this concept of KPIs. So I'm going to let Munson take over and hit you with it. Go ahead, Munson.
Nah, I'm not hitting no brother. I got a lot of people to hit right now, but that's not the
I'm not one of them. I'm not one of them.
Yeah, that ain't one of them. They, it's just like, yo, brother, come on your show, and then you disrespect him and ask crazy ass questions. You're not doing that today. That's not happening. It's a welcome mat. That's just crazy. Yo, I just write a check. Steal some inkjets. Just come on, man. It would be nice to figure out how we go along and actually are included. So I welcome the idea. I think, how do we figure out how to have a business exchange where our community can get their hardware from your organization, particularly when you think about how many children are going to need to be able to do homework, that they're going to have to print something out.
Yeah.
That they will not have a printer. They will not have any hardware at home. How can we have a small business unit that allows an expert like you to not only lead in their consuming the product, but actually get some insight and create some content with you that allows them to be able to know how they can win with insight from your organization, given you got the data, you got the relationship, and not just from you, but how do we take that all the way up to Minnesota and get with Best Buy and say, hey, we got a 24-month program where it's hardware driven. We're going to come pick it up here. We're going to figure out, based on being apart, how do we all win? And I think that that's the kind of partnership, because see, when you beat up a brother, I don't even get it, I don't even understand why you rob anybody, but in your own community, you got I just never get that. So clearly, how do we create something that is a pull for somebody like me who owns a business? And clearly, I've got a need for a printer. So now I know why buy a printer, whatever it is. But how do we create something for our community, particularly in this time of need, that all 400 people can come up with a small test? So we ain't got to ask for the world. We can pick 5 cities, obviously Atlanta. Obviously, you're in a great city, Oakland, Detroit, Chicago, a couple of towns where we know, and just kind of test and learn. Obviously, Minneapolis, because Best Buy's there, because we want to have a retail relationship. So we don't, how does there an ROI? We know there's an ROI, because that's why we got retail, and we've got a bigger play for everybody. So I think that creating those type partnerships so that people can understand the value of being associated with HP.
It's also attributable, if I can piggyback just a little bit, attributable to the studies that came out after the first round of virtual schooling, when they found that 20% of the schools in Black zip codes saw students just disappear when it started to be a virtual experience. And that's our reality that we've got to combat, and you're uniquely positioned to be a part of the solution. So talk about all of those things.
Yeah, one of the things that we're working on is what we call an HP refresh. It hasn't actually hatched yet. We're still building out the framework. But in essence, we've got data that says that 1 in 3 kids right now is without technology in the home,
Mm.
right? Now, that's a staggering statistic when you think about, one, how data-driven this world is becoming. This is, again, pre-COVID, right? I mean,
Yeah.
before all of this happened, this was still a staggering statistic. But you add to it the complication of having to learn from home, work from home, play from home, create from home. All of these things are going to require technology to do, right? So it basically illuminated what was already a problematic area for, 1 in 3 kids, right? So what we're doing with this concept called HP Refresh is it's call it a consortium. That is, individuals as well as companies are going to be able to donate product, right? And that could be the laptop that's sitting in your closet right now that you haven't been able to use for a while. And what we've done is we've developed a software that allows you to clean that hardware. It goes through a series of tests, and it can then be reallocated into communities of need, right? So what we're now trying to build out is the infrastructure for that to happen, right? Because there's a heavy lift that goes on there. It's one thing to say to, an entire population, take all your old laptops, but they got to take them somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody has to do the cleaning and somebody has to redistribute. So what we're now working on is that infrastructure. We did a pilot in Boise, Idaho, and it went really well. That happens to be one of the hubs of HP. Now what we're looking at, Munson, to your point, are those major metropolitan cities where we know that those tech deserts exist, right? You take an Oakland, you take a Detroit, a Houston, an Atlanta, a Chicago, parts of New York, and the list can go on. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna think big, start small, but scale fast, right? And the intent is to really just make sure that the product that is sitting around in people's closets and on shelves collecting dust get repurposed. And then we as the lead for this initiative will come to the table ourselves. Now, we have a program already in place with Best Buy, whereby product that can't be refurbished or can't be reutilized goes into a sustainability program where we dismantle and reuse parts so that we're also, as a byproduct of all of this work, helping the climate, right? Reducing carbon footprint, reusing parts and things like that, where we possibly can. So we've created call it the ecosystem, but now we have to be able to action it. And the team is working pretty tirelessly right now to figure out how we stand this up so there's something that we can action. We're talking to the Boys and Girls Club, for example. We know that they have chapters all over the country. And they already have this infrastructure because this is what they're good at, right? So we're talking to them and figuring out, is this one of the ways to do that? And then we're going to evaluate a few other options as well. So then when we come to the market with this idea, it's not just an idea. It becomes something that is actionable, does have very tangible benefits for the communities that are in need.
So one of the things that we love at A Seat at the Table is that we take a holistic view to everything. So we've talked about some things that you can now provide us. Now talk about a product or any products that might be coming out that you're super excited about. So at least our audience have the wherewithal so they can go out and purchase so that we can sure we drive revenue as well.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to pitch right now, but the good news is we do have some good stuff coming out on the horizon, right? Two of the divisions that I'm responsible for are all of our premium products and then all of our gaming products. So when you heard me earlier talk about work from home, learn from home, play from home, create from home, this is a platform that HP has adopted in light of the COVID pandemic. And what we basically said is folks need to tech up. And what that basically means is make sure that you have the products that you need in order to do the things that are passions of yours, or quite frankly, what you do for a living, right? And there are some things that we're doing specifically in the creative space, in the gaming space, that I'm really proud of, because we know that there are two things that are indisputable truths, right? Young millennials and Gen Z are creators at heart, right? They naturally gravitate towards the idea of creating, whether that's a post for IG or, you know, video editing and photo editing. This is a natural behavior. And what we wanted to do maybe is really shake the walled garden a little bit, and give our consumers an opportunity to evaluate other options other than what the fruit has to offer. You know, they're great at what they do, and you know, the business metrics prove it, but so does the consumer sentiment. But there are a lot of folks out there that maybe are on the fence and want to understand what other options are out there. Our job is to make sure that we're making the products and delivering the services that meet them where they are. So one of the things that I'm working pretty aggressively to do is put the brand back in the cultural narrative, right? We are a tech company, yes, but we don't have to just talk tech, right? We can be culturally relevant. We can be part of the art scene. We can be part of the music scene. We can be part of the entertainment world. We can be part of the media world, because at the end of the day, none of those things moves without technology, and vice versa. So we understand that reciprocating relationship, and what we're going to do is be more aggressive about leaning into it. So we've got some Omen products, which is our gaming division that have just launched and are really getting some steam. And then we've got some great creator laptops that are coming around holiday that we're really excited about.
Fantastic. What?
You know, since we got three brothers on the line, he doesn't read his chat, just so that you know, Daryl. Now you do, he doesn't. We're talking about Kevin. You know,
Yeah.
he ain't read the chat yet, Daryl.
Step the game up, K-Hooks. Step the game up.
Tell me the dates and I'll pick up. How about that?
So no, for us, the creating a business exchange for small businesses, creating a reason for us when you talk about, and you know, I'm stealing half and if you're watching Rolling Out a seat at the table and you don't get any of the lexicon, then you're not going to be able to have a good description of the cultural narrative that you're trying to explain at your job. Like Daryl just did a great job explaining to you about tech deserts. So if you didn't write down tech desert on your arm, but you put something else to tattoo on your arm, you might want to write tech desert and cultural narrative so that you have an understanding. Thank you very much, Daryl, because we really do want our community to understand that not only can you have a food desert, but a third of our children are in tech deserts or tech deserts in their home, which is just like not having your fruits and your vegetables at this moment. And so it's a fact. And for many of us who are talking about shopping and wearing Gucci and Prada, right, you really should be holding your money, grabbing an HP for some child that literally, because we don't need another pair of designer jeans or glasses right now. We can wait for that. There is definitely a need for someone there. But Daryl, how can we partner? Because I want to see you at RIDE, which obviously we'll be doing our RIDE conference, but literally figuring out, even if it's a 2-city, 3-city test for young female Black entrepreneurs to partner with culturally to create a cultural business exchange narrative with HP and whether it's Best Buy, Staples probably needs some help too at this point with cultural narrative. But figuring out what we can do, because many entrepreneurs need the insight that you have, the expertise and understanding, subject matter experts like yourself on how to put the suite of products together, how to embrace gaming. I was having another brand friend of mine was asking, how can they come and understand? And I'm like, you know, you're in the restaurant business and you ain't Red Bull. You're in the restaurant business and your cultural narrative ain't all that authentic. I'd like to come up with a business thing. We know he can present, Kev, particularly if he's bringing something at holiday, and RideCon is September 25th and 26th, so we can figure out something that he can present to, kind of come up with a suite, and then by holiday, and most importantly by Black History Month, moving through holiday, kind of come out with a whole pull for Black entrepreneurs, Black gamers, and make that connection point.
Yeah.
So for me, it's kind of test and learn with RideCon, which stands for Rolling Out Innovation Digital Entertainment Conference. And the whole theme of RideCon is professional evolution. Okay. We want our community to evolve. So anytime that we can, that you're doing something, clearly we need you to actually invite us into your world. Because if we don't get the invitation, the comm squad's not reaching out for Black media. It's just not cultural yet. It's not part of their narrative, you know. Yeah. Becky doesn't know me. Jamila knows me, but Becky doesn't quite know me yet. And so even the comm squad, so that they can kind of figure out that we're part of the team. We want, anytime you're doing great stuff, anything that you're standing up and testing, even if it's Black children in Idaho, then we want to cover that, because we want our community and your great work to be seen and heard, at least on our platform.
Yeah, and that's a really good call out and a welcome challenge, right? You know, and I'm no different than any other big business out there, right? We swing for the fences, and the natural propensity is when you swing for the fences, you miss some of the base hits, right? And what we're talking about is some basic things, some get back down to the grassroots marketing efforts, the grassroots platform enablement, right? When you talk about young entrepreneurs, young Black professionals that are trying to get themselves going in the right direction, do they have the tools and the knowledge to succeed, right? Not just survive, but thrive, right? When it even comes down to media, right? Your usual suspects always rise to the top: Warner Media and Disney, and because they're big and they have their fingers on, you know, on so many things that represents a simple plug and play for a lot of big brands, right? But what I've been trying to do, and it's gonna take some time, but what I've been trying to do is really introduce a number of different platforms that we should be considering when we talk about our storytelling, right? So if I go back to what I just said earlier, if I'm going to be culturally relevant, one, I have to build my cultural intelligence. And when I say I mean HPs, right? We have to understand the psyche of the audience that we want to talk to. And then we need to skate to where they are, right? And where they are places like Rolling Out. Where they are places like this. And we have to show up with a relevant narrative, that means something to this audience. Now, that's part of my creative craft, is to come up with what that narrative is. But what we have an opportunity to do is to diversify the big media dollars that we're spending to make sure that they're landing in places where the audience that we want to talk to hears us, right? And that we now can enter into a dialogue, not even just a monologue, but a dialogue with this audience, so we understand not only what's important to them, but how we can deliver on that promise that we're making, right? If we're going to say that we make products that are for everyone everywhere, well, everyone everywhere. All right. Now, what are we doing to fill in those two blanks? Where is everyone and where is everywhere, right? And sometimes the inertia of a big organization, and this is not just HP, the inertia of a big organization is everyone everywhere means go to someone who actually has that kind of umbrella reach, as opposed to taking a more surgical approach. Much harder to do, but far more effective when it's done correctly.
Yeah, and for me, it's also the loyalty. If I'm in, at some point, I'm trying to make a decision and everything's between $150 and $300 or $600, who do I pick? Right. And I want to pick my brothers. I want to at least know that a dollar of mine went back to my brother, not just on a boat and back to someplace else. So I think those are the other cultural connections, and just making a plan, because I'm sitting here and all of a sudden I haven't had to use a printer because there was always one at the office. I got to go buy a printer. Like, I got to go buy a printer? I haven't had to have a printer. I've had an HP printer, the big box printer. It's lasted a long time.
Right. Right.
Literally now, we got to buy a printer for the house.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think about all the young entrepreneurs, all the Black women, female entrepreneurs. What's our loyalty? Who should we be calling out? What should be on our Instagram showcasing, even some of the megastars and those cultural connections.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that? And even with comms, sometimes it's not just money. It's just the relationship with them understanding that you're going to skip over shining a light on any of the Black interns that were there. I don't know if y'all are still in San Diego, but I spent a whole summer in San Diego.
Yeah, we got a huge office in San Diego.
I spent a whole summer in San Diego with somebody who was working in their handheld devices.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a little ways back there. Okay.
Well, ways. I mean, come on, man. I was still in college, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember those days. I wasn't part of it, but, I've gotten a chance to do my history. And, HP has dabbled in a number of different things in the interest of bringing tech forward. And, that's part of what the technology industry requires, right? Is to continue to push the envelope. Like I said earlier, the reciprocating relationship between culture and tech forces both to march forward, right? The more enabled I am, the more creative I should be. And the more access I have, the more information I should share. The more information I share, the more tech has to play a role in making sure that it gets to the intended audience. So that's what keeps us pushing when we think about innovation. So, the words "keep reinventing" aren't just taglines. That's something that we actually take to heart, because that's what the consumer requires of us, right? And even more so, like I said, now, given what we're seeing folks have to deal with and navigate given this pandemic.
No, I was just hanging out. I was at Morehouse, and she was at Spelman, and we were just. She was a seismology major, and out there with their handheld engineering devices, and it was a great summer. But I've always thought that the whole idea was ingenious, and probably up until they got Meg as the CEO, and then I kind of wasn't feeling them for a minute. So maybe.
We've gone through our chapters in life for sure.
I'm glad they're still around.
Before we close out, I want to make sure though that we expose Daryl and some of these great jewels that we're getting on a seat at the table to the rest of the audience as well, by trying to make sure that we get him featured. Have somebody do a feature on him. And Daryl, if there's something that you just need to get out that's inside you creatively, there's an opportunity for you to present an op-ed for us. That would be great. If there's information that you just want to share about things that are important. And the other thing that I think is really important is, as we move into this post-pandemic business world, the idea that you've already are in front of mind of some of the audience that we serve by showing them how you can be a solution to the, for instance, 2.6 million small businesses, Black-owned small businesses, with our partner with the U.S. Chamber, and to the 4 million people who come to rollingout.com each month, be able to let them know that you, because you were there in part, HP can be the solution to some of their business needs. Like, all of that can be wrapped up, not only as you become maybe a keynoter and a sponsor or partner at the RIDE conference, but also in the feature, not only for you, but some sort of key African Americans inside on your team.
Absolutely.
Featuring them, maybe we do one a week, as well as making sure that if you have something that's important that you want to share with our audience by writing an op-ed, those are opportunities that are available because you are part of the family, and because Munson and Rolling Out is a platform that really speaks directly to the people that we really want to make sure and get the information. We want to make sure that we put that out in front of you before we run out of time.
Absolutely. Well, I'm all in. One of the things that I've taken on as a personal endeavor is to make sure that I'm operating from the inside out. And what I mean by that is making sure that my voice is heard internal to the HP organization, but that I'm spending just as much time out there in the community, doing my part, right? And challenging those that are considered friends of mine to do theirs, right? We're not going to boil the ocean. We're not going to solve the Rubik's Cube in one move, but a series of moves, a series of buckets over time are going to affect change. And each of us has to decide what bucket we're going to pick up. Each of us has to decide what color of that cube we're going to work on solving. And all of us has a responsibility individually to actually make the change that we need to make collectively, right? So that inside out philosophy of mine is something that I'm carrying around like a license plate on a car, man. This is what you will hear from me over and over and over again, right? I was just with Young Black Scholars in Oakland over the weekend. And one of the things we spent some time talking about is, how young people in corporate America can affect change, right? Because, they're young, they just started. Is their voice going to get heard? Are they going to be seen as a rebel? Are they going to be invited in? The fact of the matter is they have to bring their whole selves to the table. Pun intended. They have to bring their whole selves to the table. And that whole self is what's going to make the companies that they're operating in better organizations. And that kind of philosophy, the more we say it, the more we act against it, the more we have a chance to actually make change.
Part of Daryl, and I just want to make sure that you heard us, even if it's not at Hewlett Packard and you're at the Young Black Scholars and it's something that you're doing, or it's an organization that we need to write about the executive director. It's only a few phone photos. Here's who you need to talk to, so that we can also showcase the young people and those who are actually serving. So we want to know all about it. Obviously, I'm in ATL and Kevin's there, you're in the Bay. But that way we can keep that narrative going, even that there's greatness that y'all are seeding. Because we're much more of a bridge than we are one demographic. Gotcha. Obviously, when we put Sweetie or the baby on the cover, then we know what demographic that attracts. But it's really a seduction model for them to understand that greatness is on every level. Absolutely.
And I've talked about this for years as well. There's always a game behind the game. And everybody gets fascinated with what the cover says. The fact of the matter is, there was a photographer that had to shoot it. There was an editor that had to edit it. For every video game, there's somebody that's coding it, somebody that's creating the box art, right? We have to understand that it's more than what's in front of the camera. And the opportunities abound when we get that knowledge and we start to attack those opportunities with the kind of ferocity that we should, because the skill set, the passion, and the talent is there. The opportunity is what we have to create. Super.
Well, we look forward to having you back. We'll reach out for you, but I just want those who, to kind of recap, it's a real issue. This 1/3 of all our children will not have an opportunity to wake up and just walk down and turn on a computer. This is going to be a real issue. So with what Daryl's doing at HP and what they are working to stand up is going to be so meaningful to this society. So we want to thank you for that. If you didn't add Tech Desert to part of your conversation when you begin to describe, be sure to include that in your cultural narrative as you are describing for individuals. See how I get it there? I see
you working it. I see you working it.
It's better to cheat than repeat. So, but anyhow, just want to thank you for coming on. I mean, it's been wonderful to be here.
Welcome the opportunity. Anytime I can be of service.
We're going to get something to you. TJ's going to reach out for you. We're proud. All Morehouse men are welcome. We probably got 8 working there and probably 10 graduating at rolling out anyhow at all times. So
good deal.
It's what makes makes Atlanta great for sure. We got plenty here in Atlanta, so need to come on and visit us again soon. Rolling out a seat at the table. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Kevin,
What it do, man?
time for us to go, my brother. That was an excellent guest. He did a phenomenal job.
Yeah. Daryl's one of the great brothers, man. Like, you meet brothers on the way up, and when they get there, a lot of times they're not the same. Daryl's been the same guy at every stop he's ever made, always wanting to figure out how he can serve our community. So very, very proud of knowing.
All right. Well, what you got to say before we close out? Because we've had a great show.
Great show, and stay tuned. We've still got some incredible announcements that we're going to tease. One includes The Rock, and remember, The Rock has 190 million Twitter followers, and we're going to surprise you with an incredible partnership announcement very shortly.
All right. So all you who were teased by that. All right. So this is rolling out a seat at the table. We've appreciated. We've had the U.S. Black Chamber, Ron Busby on. Obviously, for those who didn't know that there were tech deserts, you now know that there are tech deserts.
And it's time to tech up.
You must
tech up. I got that one too.
You should definitely tech up.
You got to tech up if you want to be a player in this world.
Right. So Daryl Butler brought us insight, shared activity, and part of what they're moving. Gaming is big, obviously. You heard the investment that they had there, and obviously new creative systems. So for all of you who are watching A Seat at the Table, hopefully you've got something to give yourself more as you move forward in this world, making sure we all are able to have a seat, some to even create their own table. You had something else to say, Kim?
No.
But we're proud. I want to thank my co-host, Kevin Hooks, for coming on and bringing continued great guests. But most of all, for all of you, we appreciate you watching. We'll see you tomorrow on A Seat at the Table. I'm Munson Steed. This is Kevin Hooks, your host. And remember, you do not have to be in the streets, but you do have to be in the struggle. We'll see you tomorrow. A Seat at the Table. I'm Munson Steed. Peace. 812. Hey.